It's no secret that Australia is absolutely massive. The country spans the entire continent, covering a staggering 2.9 million square miles. That's plenty of room to stretch your legs. But when it comes to farming, not so much. You see, land degradation is one of the most serious and persistent challenges facing both the nation and the continent. Thanks to the combined effects of wind and water erosion, vegetation loss, and soil salinization, more than half of Australia's agricultural land requires treatment before it can yield anything worthwhile. To put things into perspective, degraded land makes up around 2/3 of Australia's total area. That's nearly triple the global average of 22% reported in 2022. If not for a somewhat unexpected hero, the situation might be even worse. Enter sheep. Yes, the woolly kind. Australians discovered an ingenious way to use sheep, specifically their wool, to breathe life back into barren soil. Let's explore how these animals have become surprising saviors of Australia's struggling landscape. First, take a look at this map. The darker the country, the more sheep it has as of 2025. As always, China tops the list. It currently has about 194 million sheep roaming its vast lands. India follows with around 75 million. And then there's Australia. Despite its severe land degradation, the country is home to more than 70 million sheep. Now, that's a lot of sheep. But are they raised to fight land degradation? Not exactly, at least, not initially. The primary reason for such large herds is economic. Sheep are a major source of both meat and wool. In the 2024 to 2025 fiscal year, Australia exported approximately 657,000 tons of meat, an increase of 50% compared to a decade earlier. What gives Australia an edge is the efficiency of its sheep farms. They produce between 5 and 10 times more meat per hour of labor than most of their global competitors. That kind of productivity is essential, especially when labor costs in Australia are roughly 10 times higher than in countries like China. But sheep aren't just useful for meat. Their wool is another powerhouse commodity. Every so often, you'll hear incredible stories, like that of a sheep wandering the wilds of Australia for years without ever being sheared. One such animal, dubbed a fashionista, carried an astonishing 44 pounds of wool on her body. And she wasn't even that old. Another sheep was found with an unbelievable 77 pounds of wool clinging to it, clearly a record breaker. On average, a domestic sheep lives around 13 years and can produce between 110 to 154 pounds of wool in its lifetime. With over 70 million sheep across the country, you can imagine how much wool Australia produces. In fact, the country is responsible for about 45% of the world's wool supply. That's nearly half of all the wool used globally, an astounding figure. But it's not just the quantity that makes Australian wool stand out, it's also the quality. Much of that reputation comes from one specific breed, the Australian Merino. These sheep, first brought from South Africa in the 1790s, have adapted remarkably well to the Australian climate. Over time, they become renowned for producing the finest and softest wool on the planet. Merino wool is widely considered superior to any other fiber, whether natural or synthetic. While standard wool might be used for things like bedding and upholstery, Merino is all about premium fashion, high-performance sportswear, and even luxury undergarments. Thanks to this breed, Australia has become the wool capital of the world. But even this thriving industry isn't immune to economic pressure. The wool market peaked back in 2018 to 2019. Since then, prices have plummeted. At the lowest point, wool was selling for just $800 per 100 kilograms, about 220 pounds. Today, it's recovered somewhat, up to 1,200 Australian dollars, but that's still far below its former highs. Faced with dropping demand and high storage costs, many producers found themselves with a difficult choice. Hold on to their wool and hope for a price rebound, or dump it and cut their losses. Some resorted to discarding the wool altogether. But others came up with a smarter solution: turn it into something that could help solve another of Australia's biggest problems: degraded soil. Enter wool pellets. These small, compact bits of wool are produced by feeding raw wool into machines that compress it into fertilizer-sized pieces. They're easy to use and ideal for Australia's drought-stricken lands. Unlike chemical fertilizers, wool pellets are all natural, and they're proving incredibly effective. Australia's need for sustainable solutions became especially clear after the devastating bushfires of 2019 to 2020. These fires were triggered by one of the most extreme droughts in recent history. In Sydney, rainfall was practically non-existent, just 0.08 inches over an extended period, and temperatures soared to 104 degrees Fahrenheit 40 degrees Celsius. The fires made international headlines, but their aftermath was just as concerning. Vast stretches of forest dried out. Farmlands in states like New South Wales and Queensland turned to dust. And here's the troubling part. Scientists say this won't be a one-off event. Extreme droughts will keep happening, and the land will continue to degrade unless sustainable countermeasures are implemented. That's where wool pellets come in. One of their standout features is water retention. These pellets can absorb up to 20 times their weight in water and release it gradually, depending on the soil's needs. This reduces irrigation demands and keeps plants hydrated longer. Though not a miracle cure, their effects are already visible. Some arid areas treated with wool pellets are beginning to show signs of greening again. But that's not all. Wool breaks down slowly, over about 6 months, providing a gentle, continuous release of nutrients into the soil. Raw wool contains around 50% carbon, 14.6% nitrogen, 5% sulfur, and trace amounts of calcium, magnesium, and iron. Think of it as a slow-release fertilizer that enriches the soil without the harsh impact of synthetic alternatives. Wool pellets also help improve soil porosity, a critical factor in promoting healthy plant roots and overall plant growth. And surprisingly, they're also effective at pest control. Snails and slugs, which can devastate young plants, won't cross a border of wool pellets. The reason? The tiny natural fibers irritate their soft undersides, creating a safe, chemical-free barrier. Another innovative use of wool in agriculture is as mulch. Traditionally made from organic materials like bark or straw, mulch helps conserve moisture, suppress weeds, and regulate soil temperature. But wool mulch? It's next level. In fact, you could call it mulch on steroids. Let's talk plums. In 2024, Australia earned about $67 million from plum production. It's not the country's biggest export, but it's significant. Farmers looking to boost their yields began wrapping plum trees in a layer of wool padding mixed with cornstarch. The results were nothing short of remarkable. Fruit yields rose by 37%, the size and weight of the plums increased by nearly 49%, and the nutritional value improved across the board. The technique was later tested on strawberries, with equally impressive results. Wool mulch also stabilizes soil temperature, reducing daytime and nighttime fluctuations by 3.6 to 5.4 degrees Celsius during the hot summer months. Combined with its water retention capabilities, this makes it an ideal solution for Australia's scorching climate. And here's something you probably didn't expect: wool blankets. Yes, actual blankets made from 100% wool are now being composted in Australia. Since wool is biodegradable and the blankets are made from pure material, people began experimenting. They mixed old wool blankets with food waste and wrapped them in mesh to form compost bundles. Over the next 5 weeks, they added more food scraps and carbon-rich material, simulating a natural decomposition process. These experiments revealed something incredible. Wool compost significantly enriched the soil, just like the pellets and mulch. And since the country already had warehouses filled with unused wool, it was a practical and sustainable way to recycle a valuable resource. In the face of land degradation, drought, and market instability, Australians are showing remarkable ingenuity. By reimagining the role of sheep wool, from clothing material to agricultural tool, they've turned a looming environmental crisis into an opportunity for innovation. It's a compelling reminder that sometimes, the solutions to our biggest problems are already hiding in plain sight, wrapped in fleece and grazing quietly on the horizon.